sometimes, you are again with a bigger power, and the bigger power has got more weight, more leverage, more influence, and could probably walk away with what it wants. But we had great friendships with I talked about Iraq, Syria, Libya, and then the vacuum was created, with the American intervention or foreign intervention, removal of those regimes, power vacuum. The foreign policy, if you look at it, even when governments change, the basic core components of a foreign policy don't change, because at the end of the day, it's pursuit of your national interests. That Chinese diplomats have become very aggressive, and they could be nasty, they could be disrespectful, and they used to call it the wolf diplomacy. That that China, the kind of power they have gained and the kind of influence they have, so that is reflected in the way their diplomats behave.
Hello everyone, welcome to the episode 5 of our podcast series, and this one is very special because the guest we have today has served our country for 35 years, that is more than 3 decades, and this means something. So we genuinely respect him for coming today and share his experiences. So please watch this complete session till the end and learn from his experiences. And today we are honored to be joined by Sanjiv Kohli sir, who was the retired ambassador of India, whose diplomatic career spans several decades and multiple continents. Known for his sharp vision and deep understanding of global affairs, sir has represented India in key posting, strengthened bilateral relationships, and contributed in shaping India's foreign policy at crucial moment. One of the moment that I got to know recently about the Kuwait story that I hope sir will share us in the coming time. And sir, we are very privileged to have you with us today to decode complexities of international relations and understand how diplomacy truly works behind the scene. So, you can carry forward with this.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, and I'm so happy to join you here and share my experiences, and through you, reach out to people who would be interested to know more about various foreign policy issues.
Yes, sir. So I'll get straight to the point. And sir, we have seen stark increase in the interest of young Indians in understanding the India's foreign policy. So to keep the basics in check, I want to know what exactly is the foreign policy.
I'll define it in very simple terms. But as you rightly said, there's an increasing interest, built over the last maybe 10, 15, 20 years. To be honest, when we joined the Foreign Service, I joined it in 1988. Not many of us, to be honest, knew, the complexities of Foreign Service, or not even the basic, manner in which the Ministry of External Affairs works. And, at that time, for many, many years, foreign policy was seen something as, something which is highly centralized, and, mainly the preoccupation of, political and bureaucratic elites in the Ministry of External Affairs. I think things started to change after, we opened up to the world after liberalization. Suddenly people realize that there's the interconnection between our domestic policies, our foreign policies, our own trade policy, our, our manufacturing policy, etc., how it's linked to the external environment in which, we function. And then as we moved forward, then, the political narrative, political discourse started on, India's image in the world, how India's looked at. And then with the social media coming in, things, people got further interested. The debate started happening over social media. And, so the kind of interest started building up. And now I think it's very much part of a normal discourse that happens, when we discuss various things. I think foreign policy is also a matter of great interest. So that's about, how, foreign policy now, foreign policy issues are kind of at the center of our national debate, in the media, in the social media, even, when you talk about our place in the world. So, and that's good thing to know, because, foreign policy is never, there's nothing foreign about foreign policy. It's just the environment in which you operate is an external environment. But end of the day, your foreign policy is also a projection of your, your national power, and its pursuit of your national interests. It's also kind of, the way you engage to influence others, again, in terms of realizing your own, economic goals, your socio-economic agenda. So everything linked to the foreign policy is national. Your national interests, your national goals, objectives, and so and the leverage you bring to the table and the way you conduct your foreign policy, as I said, is again outcome of what you bring to the table in terms of your own national strength. And as I said, foreign policy is by very nature, by very definition, it's a competitive process. Because when you engage with someone, you have your set of interests, the other side has their set of interests. So you have to do a kind of balancing, find out where, there's a convergence, there's a component of mutual benefit because, negotiations are never a zero-sum game. It's not that one side takes it all and the other side is left empty-handed. So finding that kind of, point of convergence where both sides can go with the win-win situation. I mean, that's very important to have a sustainable outcome. Otherwise, sometimes, you're engaged with a bigger power and the bigger power has got more weight, more leverage, more influence, and could probably walk away with what it wants. But, that would be very short-sighted, because, you know, you work in a dynamic environment and, to have a sustainable kind of outcome in an environment which is changing very rapidly, you need to have some kind of component of mutual benefit, mutuality of interest. So that's all, as I said, it's all about balancing the act. And the way, because it's complex, because you function in an environment, in a jurisdiction which is not entirely in your control. You know, when you kind of operate within your own country, you have so many, institutions to support you, and you're not working in an environment where you don't have any control. But when you're outside, you lots of things are outside your control, and you carry your national flag, but you're dealing with someone whose jurisdiction, whose interests, whose system of governance, whose outlook to the world could be entirely different from yours. So that adds a layer of complexity. And as an external, your power, the external power system is dynamic. The global geopolitical, geoeconomic landscape changes very rapidly, and especially these days, things are changing so fast. There's so much of uncertainty. There's so much of volatility. So that requires a lot of agility, a lot of, foreign policy has to respond very quickly because things are changing so fast. So a lot of things is, tactical moves, short term. Sometimes, you get into transactional things, sometimes into short term alignments. I think right now the kind of uncertainty phase is very difficult to have a kind of a long term view on anything because so I think now mostly you would be looking at short term kind of what suits you best in terms of a short term kind of a time span, and you would look at multi alignments, and you would also look at you know it won't be a rigid alliance, long term alliances. So depending on the issue at hand, you build up a certain constituency where interest on a particular issue leads to some kind of a convergence. So until we find a new equilibrium, and so the equilibrium is in a state of flux, and how things would settle down is really anybody's guess at this point of time. Because if you look at it, traditional alliances are getting broken. Your international institutions are getting undermined, and you never know. Uh, 2-3 years back, India was in a much better position. But right now, I think we have a lot of challenges on our hand, and I think we're dealing with a situation with a weak hand. So that calls for adjustments. That also calls for some kind of we yield more probably than we gain from a certain thing. But we have to bide our time and, as I said, and hope that, given our inherent strengths, it's not that, in difficult times, your core strengths do not come to your advantage. Our main assets of a large market, the world's most populous nation, young youth, youthful nation, and, the kind of literacy, the knowledge, and, technological strength that we have gained in the last decade or 15 years are something which would always be, the cards which we can play. And, again, we may not be a big power, but we are a rising power. We are a major power. So, it's not easy to brush India under the carpet. We are the leader of the global South, and, as I said, we have a strategic location in Indo-Pacific, and, still the fastest growing economy, even with the new tariff structures imposed against us. So there are certain strengths, and I think the challenge is now to, you know, till you get a more favorable external environment, is to build upon your national strengths. There's still a lot to do in terms of, economic reforms. We emerging as a big defense manufacturing of our own industry. So how we build upon that, how we go to the next stage of economic reforms, because your leverage is what you bring to the table, and, the kind of indispensability, about you, like China has, their control over the supply chains makes them, you know, some, you can't, kind of, just, you know, brush away China's position. That's why, China has got a much better deal in terms of tariff. We've got this punitive tariff because of the oil we buy from Russia, but China has got away with that. Turkey has got away with that because Turkey is a member of the NATO. So there's that kind of alliance we have. But I think our choice we have made of strategic autonomy. So some sacrifices we would make. We will never be a member of any alliance, especially of an alliance which has a defense related, which is mainly focused on defense. So when you make that choice, your challenges increase. So now I think we as a nation we have to kind of overcome those challenges, and, that's where test of character comes.
So, you talked about the dynamic nature that we are seeing. So, in that, we have seen that tone of our foreign policy has become aggressive, which also, attracts some criticism from from the globe and the national parties also. So, how do you see that tone of our foreign policy?
If you remember, there was this term came, I think, about 5 6 years, wolf diplomacy. They used to call it about China, that Chinese diplomats have become very aggressive, and they could be nasty, they could be disrespectful, and they used to call it the wolf diplomacy. That that China, the kind of power they have gained and the kind of influence they have, so that is reflected in the way their diplomats behave. And, I think, India also, there's a very thin dividing line between, arrogance and being more confident. I remember this question was also, I think, once asked from our external affairs minister. I think some European media had asked him that suddenly you find a new aggression in India's diplomatic outreach, or in terms of Indian diplomats, kind of engage with others. So he said, no, it's India has become more self-confident. So that is a point of debate, whether it's aggression or it's arrogance or more confidence. But I think it's always good to be humble, so that, and diplomacy is as much about speaking as it is about listening. So I think there's a basic lesson in diplomacy. Whether I don't think it depends whether you represent a large country or a small country, and, humility is always, and especially with India, India is seen as a nation with a lot of civilizational heritage, civilizational values. The Indian voice is sought after. India is always seen as someone which would, which would give voice to the aspirations of those who are very vulnerable, especially, countries in Africa or the developing countries. So when you carry that responsibility, I think you need to be more humble. I'm not saying being confident is a bad thing, but sometimes some people can cross the line. So it's best to not give even an impression. People get an impression of that you're being arrogant. And then I think also this is an individual behavior. I don't think as a class Indian diplomacy has become more arrogant or more aggressive. Maybe there are all kinds of people, but I think we still command a lot of respect. And but as I said, it is always good to be humble, and humility always pays, and aggression and arrogance would generally be counterproductive.
So, if I carry forward your previous answer, sir, so when a crisis break out, say a border incident like Pak-sponsored terrorism, China's aggression at borders, or a global conflicts like Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Palestine war. So, what does the internal decision making look like at the MEA? How do we balance our strategic ties or our national integrity? How do we balance out that?
I think India, Pakistan, India, China is slightly because we are directly involved. So then Ukraine, Russia would be a different ballgame, and because you're not directly involved, India, Pakistan is always coming to Pakistan. It's a case of enduring security challenge, and we all kind of agree that Pakistan would remain an enduring threat. So Pakistan has to be managed on a day-to-day basis, and various arms of the government, whether it's the defense forces, whether these are our forces at the border, or our intelligence agencies, the Ministry of External Affairs. So that kind of it's a day-to-day management. And then there are structures to deal with crisis. There's the cabinet committee on security affairs. There's the national security advisor. So these are all standard operating procedures. That when a crisis happens, what would come into play. There are established hotlines, there are established systems. So I think that system is well laid out. So I mean that's not something probably which we need to go into details. But I was just talking in terms of conflict. India China is a more of a long term thing, because China, you know, if situations change at the border, then the entire thing changes. Because both countries had agreed to maintain some kind of peace and tranquility at the border, and so China, in that sense, is not a day to day management affair like Pakistan. And we had relative periods of calm at the border, and relationship generally although cautious, but there has engagement remained. We could build upon, especially on economic issues where both sides stand to gain. So I mean, strategic issues would be kept apart. I mean, cooperation in industries or trade where there's a strategic component to it. But when things change at the border, like it happened, I think 2020 was that border thing. Then you know then it's understood that the relationship will not remain normal. But again, as I said, uh, given the way, I think because the environment is changing, after a certain time of freeze, I think both sides realize that you have to be engaged with each other. I think more so on our side, especially after the American tariff and economic sanctions. We need to have options, and also some of critical inputs of our industry. We have been sourcing it from China. So our own industry suffers. So we have to realize that, when it comes to between India and China, China has more cards to play. China has more weightage on the international stage. China is a permanent member of the Security Council. So I think a period of long freeze with China is not to our advantage. So I think that realization came, and simultaneously, some kind of disengagement and de-escalation started happening at the border. We had stopped issuing tourist visas both countries, so we started the resumption of issue of visas, the resumption of direct flights, some kind of economic engagement has started. We need Chinese technology. China has, in certain areas of technology, I think they've even, they've surpassed America. And investments, many of our, big startups had Chinese investment. So for your own economic, industrialization, your economic growth, technology growth, I think we need to find some kind of ways to remain engaged with China without letting our attention to go away from what's happening at the border. And it's not that China also needs us. China has also been under pressure from the West, so they also need a big market like us. Plus, I think China is also trying to tell the world that it's a more reliable partner than America, especially after Trump came. So the way unilaterally Trump is appending everything. So China wants to tell the world that it's better to be engaged with China than with the US. So for sending that message across, also it needs to have some kind of a working relationship with India, because if you can't live with your neighbor, then the other countries would feel that China also is probably as unreliable as the Americans. So, and also I think our views on many global issues, especially multipolarity and multilateralism, I think we are more in sync with China than what's happening with the US. And but the long-term strategic competition would remain for many, many years between US and China. So, and for us, both relationships are very important. America, especially because most of your investment, your technology, your trade would happen with the West. China would always remain a kind of competitor. Sometimes, you'll have bad periods, sometimes you'll have good periods, because end of the day, you're in the same region. And China has a big power also, has interests which would, collide with our interests, especially, India's neighbors influence, Chinese influence and Chinese expansionism would happen at India's cost. So some of our interests could get hurt. And but I think for the time being, given the environment that we have, as I said, this is time for tactical adjustments, not strategic. So I think we need to be engaged with China. We need to, with Russia, very steadfast relationship. President Putin is coming today, so that's a very important relationship for us. And at the same time, remain engaged with the Americans in trade talks. Hope to get a deal which is more equitable, more just. And Europe, separately, Europe is also feeling the American heat. So our countries like Canada, Australia, where there's more convergence with us at the point of time. They all, the American policy toward them could again be very volatile. But those are again, countries which are, growing. They have, invest their capital. They're good markets for India. And I was looking at our exports. Even after the American tariffs came into play, we've kind of diversified our trade. More exports going to Africa and to Australia, Latin America. So I think that's the right path to follow. And so I think, Indian foreign establishment is handling the challenges well, and we need to remain focused.
So, sir, if we talk about our neighbors, we have seen recently a trend of protest, be it Gen Z protest or the civil war situations. So, I want to know that what role Indian foreign policy play in this, and also do we check the social fabric of our partnering nations? Is it important for us to check that?
I think one is, relationships with neighbors are always a challenge for any country. For us, more because we live in a very difficult neighborhood. All these neighbors, they share border with us. None of them share border with each other. And, we have historical border issues. We have issues of refugees. We have issues of, the territories being used for, activities which affect our security and common ethnicity related issues. So it's a very complicated, you know, uh, equation that we have, which the forces which come into play in our relationship with the neighborhood. And I mean, you rightly said, uh, we had first had issues with Maldives, then Bangladesh now, Nepal, and one is that you know I think other than one is we've developed as a very stable democracy. Most countries in our region would have seen a kind of either a distorted kind of democracy, sometimes military rule, and so the institutions, like political institutions, they don't have the kind of maturity and resilience that we have in India. And again, you know, the size, India is, the size of the economy or the size of the country also creates this big neighbor, small neighbor issue. In times of good relationship, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, they both could, rise with the, Indian economic growth. And so, the size, India's economic size, has a natural pull to bring those countries. And that's why we have been able to manage the relationship because, they all gain economically when there's some kind of a cooperative framework in which we operate together. So some of these issues have to do with, again, China trying to carve out its own influence, whether it's in Nepal or Sri Lanka or now Bangladesh, Maldives. A lot of it had to do with the Chinese factor. And again, you know, Sri Lanka, the protests happened. There was a left-wing government has come down there. Nepal was, same political parties, building coalitions. So there were a lot of, illusion and kind of frustration with the kind of political system they had, unemployment. So that has been a common factor, governance deficit. I think all these countries, not that we have everything going for us, but I think our size, our maturity of our institutions, the opportunities generally that, India's economy brings out. So the kind of protest or the kind of you know mobilization we saw in those countries, especially of the younger generation against unemployment, lack of opportunities, political manipulation. So all kind of falling under the governance deficit. So now any instability in those countries does affect India also because you know there could be security spillover of security issues, or there could be from Nepal or Bangladesh, we could have, refugee issues. So I think, and then there are common ethnicity issues. With Sri Lanka, we have the Tamils, Bangladesh, same language, same culture. And so I think the best way to deal with this to, remain engaged in a sense, a continuous kind of sustained dialogue at the high political level, economic engagement, better connectivity, and also, to be more, there was when Mr. Gujral was the foreign minister, there was this Gujral doctrine which came up that, we should not accept reciprocity. India should be doing much more for the neighbors than expecting the same in return, because as a larger neighbor, you need to be more magnanimous. So, and it's not that, we've always, Sri Lanka, when this thing happened, we were the first ones to respond. So I think we have to be always the, kind of the go-to country that when other neighbors feel that they are in some kind of, problem, economic security, they should feel confident that India is the country to go to, and India would be, a fair, neighbor to help us, and also an impactful country. So for that again, as I said, you need to be economically engaged with them, and you need to build relationships across the political spectrum. Sometimes, you tend to you get a comfort level. Bangladesh, we're very comfortable with Sheikh Hasina, and probably we never knew that things would, suddenly would explode. So having a larger, dialogue with the political spectrum, with the social, with the society at large, building friendships across the board, and again, you could have, especially with the younger upcoming leaders, So that's a policy which, your policies you have to keep on reshaping them according to the, trends happening around you. So that's why I said these days you need to be very agile, very nimble-footed because things are changing very fast. And but yes, a stable and a peaceful neighborhood is always to our advantage, and we must do everything possible to ensure that democracy, peace, stability, prosperity, kind of is encouraged in the region as a whole.
So, so we have seen our external affair minister talking about our India's soft power influence over its neighbors. So, do you think India is efficiently using its soft power influence over the neighbors? Because we have seen a lot of criticism from across the neighbors, like we have seen in Maldives. Now we are seeing in the Bangladesh and Nepal also. So, do you think they are using it efficiently, like China is using it?
I think one is, the India-China comparison, not only neighbors, I'll also bring in Africa. So the India-China comparison, because we are different forms of government, China has much more money to spend. We don't have that kind of money, so we need to be more focused on things we can do. So the India-China, I think, comparison probably is not very appropriate. And but I think you know you're right. Soft power. I'll give you some examples, which I'm not, because I was Joint Secretary Africa for some time, for 4 years, in fact. Most of the projects which we would do, we would finance. Our bureaucracy, again, we are a democracy, so, whatever Ministry of Foreign Ministry, for External Ministry would propose, it would go to Department of Economic Affairs, it would go to, the concerned, if it's a water project, it would go to the Ministry of Water. Then there are certain areas which are reserved for the public sector. So you have to bring in, if you are, if it's a Government of India project, Government of India funded project being done in Nepal or being in Africa. I think one complaint which Nepal also has been saying, Africa has been saying, is that, our projects take too long to be completed. But that's more of a systemic issue. So we have to see how we could, make that more efficient. But as I said, again, there are regulations, that the public sector undertakings have to be involved. So, within our system, how we can make it more efficient. And it's a public money, so you can't hand over everything also to the private sector in that sense. You need to have some kind of oversight. China, that's not an issue. China could do a project in 1 year. Same, a much smaller project we do in 5 years. So that is something we need to do internal kind of, our own examination, re-examining our procedures. As a as a as a joint secretary, I also used to get very frustrated because we promise a lot of things, but we are not able to deliver on time. I mean, there's no one who doubts our intentions. It's not that we are making false promises, but if we are not able to fulfill that in a reasonable point of time, I think that there is something, wrong with our own systems. So, so whether it's question of, you know, a big part of our thing with the neighbors is skill development. We carry out all these capacity building programs through institutions or experts we set up there, or bringing their people here on scholarships. And again, how to make it more broad based. There's always demand for more scholarships. Again, as I said, your budget, your finances are limited. So within that, each country wants more and more scholarships in India. So how do we manage that? So these are, things which you need to continue to face because your resources are finite. But within those finite resources, how efficiently you could use them in terms of, you know, doing things more efficiently, more expeditiously, And I think also build constituencies in universities, Indian chairs, so that you're directly dealing with the younger people. And healthcare is a big thing, pharmaceuticals, even in the most difficult times in Afghanistan, the humanitarian aid we used to send, the pharmaceuticals we used to send. There's still a lot of respect, even with the Taliban government, which is there now. So we have lots of, strengths. It's just how we use them, humanitarian assistance, healthcare, skill development, capacity building, developmental projects. So all these things, finding the right mix, doing them more efficiently, and sometimes, although we try to, we take up projects which are in the priority list of that particular country. I think that is again which distinguishes us from China. China would do big airports. Sometimes that country may not need that kind of an airport. We do more of, development oriented. We will do a spa project or an irrigation project or something. So maybe more consultative process. You could still, further improve your processes. So I think we need to improve our processes. It's not that we've been lacking in something. We do a lot of things, but we need to improve over their execution, their implementation.
So, if I take away your focus from neighbors to the global powers, I'll ask you a question which was given to me, and it was given by a few people, and it was the same question. They want to know how India is dealing with Trump administration, and is India dealing in a right way, or we can improve because there is a lot of buzz around this topic.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic because India was seen as one of the countries which was on best terms with Trump one. The first thing, and when I think the this time elections, I think there were a lot of scenes in India, people praying for Trump to win the election because we all felt that Trump is a great friend, and our government, our prime minister has been able to manage it very well in the first term. So I think we kind of were overconfident in that sense because Trump is a mercurial person. Trump could be, changing his mind every, every hour probably. And I mean, some experts say, although I'm not party to it, that when the trade talks started with the with the US in Trump too, we misread some of the signals. We were still very confident that that India would get a fair deal. We took it for granted, or that the prime minister would speak and it would be done. So I think that sense of overconfidence, yes, was there. So I think there we made a mistake. But all countries that are dealing with Trump have had some kind of an issue. Even Europe, has issues. Canada has issues. So it's not that only India is, facing challenges. So his unilateralism, where he, as I said, zero sum game. Right now, he wants everything which is in his favor. And again, what is in his favor, what is in America's favor, again, is very difficult to say. You know, relationship with India was built on this premise that, as a counterbalance to China, especially in the Indo-Pacific region, it's important for American policy to be anchored around India. And that still makes sense. It's the strategic, merit of that thing is still there. But now, for Trump, you never know whether he's thinking long term, he's thinking short term, or Pakistan, the way Pakistan is on a high with him. You know, Trump one, he said, Pakistan is the most, unreliable country. You spend billions, they're this, they're that. But right now, they're one of his, probably most favorite kind of a nation. So, but same as I said before, but it's a relationship which is very, very important for us in terms of, trade, investment, technology, and America is going to be the international agenda setting nation for many, many years. Although China is kind of, is the competitor. But I think for many more years, the American power in terms of setting the agenda, in terms of, long distance projection of power is unmatched. So you need to remain engaged with America, and there are no two points about it. And I think the best way I think which people feel is that don't take Trump literally. It's not that we have to get angry or agitated every second day when he says Indian economy is dead. You know, I also felt very hurt. When he said that, I also wrote something about it that that this is nonsense and all that. So it's natural for us to get hurt. But when you see more and more, you know, is that you don't take him literally. And with America, it's a very broad-based relationship. It's just not. And given that America is also a democracy like us, so lots of things are happening. You know, in the business area between the private sectors. The startup ecosystem, and there are lots of even Republican senators and congressmen who are very favorable. They have been calling upon Trump to. So you have that constituency there, and Trump is not going to be a permanent factor. So I think you have to just, you have to ensure, like other countries do, that you don't offend him, and wait for your time, remain constructively engaged, do what you can do in terms of probably sometimes, it just gives a boost to his ego. And so, you have to find a way to deal with someone like Trump. And I think we've been generally doing so well. We've not reacted aggressively when every time he says that he was responsible for, India-Pakistan confrontation to end Operation Sindoor and all that. I think he says it every second day. And that India-Pakistan war was one of the 8 wars that he had been. And he threatened us with the trade thing and this thing, this thing. So we've been ignoring it. We have not been reacting. But again, in a democracy, your opposition, your media would speak about it. Your, in the parliament, there would be noise about it. So sometimes government is pushed into a corner. And, we did say, no, no. We did say he was lying, but we did say it did happen. So that's a challenge which we face. Some countries can manage that, they could. But I think being a democracy, some of our narratives would offend him because, the government has to reply in the parliament. So I think as a kind of, sensitivity, I think has to be shown around. Maybe, the parliament or the media should not push the government that much, but that's easier said than done. So I think we remain engaged with America. We remain engaged with Russia. We do our multi-alignment as we are doing now, and we build our national strengths. I think that's the only way to deal with the American challenge at this point of time.
So, sir, you have served Gulf also, and now we see that Gulf region has always seen chaos in bits of time, and now there is unrest in Middle East also. So, how do you see that? How India should engage? Because Gulf is also important for us, and in Middle East we have Israel as our traditional friend. So, how do you see things in that matter?
I think number one is, the Middle East or the Arab world or the Islamic world is not a monolith. Sometimes we make the mistake that, that there could be, a single policy to deal with the the GCC countries are different. They, I think they're more worried about, their own political stability and, these are countries, small countries, small populations. In fact, the number of expatriate workers, including Indian workers, is much more than the native population. And but they're very important to us in terms of energy, imports, trade, and you know, I I think they're as uncomfortable with the rise of forces like Hamas or Hezbollah as India is. So it's not that when you say that if you say something against the Hamas or the Hezbollah, that the Gulf would get upset. I think they share And many of their, we've not seen them taking, any one of them taking a very hard stand when Israel was pounding the Palestinians. So, so you need to have different kind of policies. Israel is a, as you said, there's a huge kind of cooperation in the defense sector. And again, Israel has been a traditional friend. But also, in the Middle East, we had great friendships with I'm talking about Iraq, Syria, Libya. And then the vacuum was created, with the, American intervention or the foreign intervention, removal of those regimes, power vacuum. But if you look at it now, India still, our historic relationship with that part of the world, there's still a lot of goodwill for India. Even the new Syrian regime, which came out of ISIS, they've been saying that they really want to build up, economic cooperation, education-related cooperation. The Taliban, the foreign minister came, then the commerce minister came. So, and they also know that, they cannot take their own neighbors for granted. Turkey has its own game plan for Syria. UAE, Saudi Arabia would have its own game plan. Israel would have its own game plan. India is not in the region, but India is a country which could influence development in the region. So they all want India also to be part of the game. And historic, traditional goodwill, India's own capabilities. India could be a moderating thing. We have, I think, other than Turkey, we have great relationships with all the GCC countries. We have with Israel. We have, with other countries. So other Turkey, I think Turkey is the only one where the relationship is kind of downhill. So I think we have a role to play in the Middle East. We have a historic connect with them, and they all welcome India. Maybe not only in terms of security, but in terms of economic, you know, technological, industrialization, developmental assistance, skill development, education, scholarships. So we have a role to play in the Middle East, and a pragmatic policy which we have been following. I think it serves our advantage, and also I think another thing in those areas, even if Syria, Iraq, you have the minority groups also there. The Kurds or the Druze. They are also they feel that India is you know emphasis on an inclusive, all inclusive kind of regime. So the minority group there also feel very comfortable with India's involvement. And since we are not exactly located there, they believe that we have no territorial ambitions or a axe to grind like Turkey might have or Saudi Arabia might have. So we are not there to carve out an area of influence. India is seen more as a stabilizing factor. So I think that's why we are welcome
So, sir, when you talk about foreign policy, like you have mentioned that people were worshipping Trump before election and praying for his win. And recently, we have seen during the Operation Sindoor, there was a trend of boycotting foreign nations. So, how do we deal with this? And same happened with the Israel-Palestine war. Some faction of our society were boycotting Israel products. So, does it impact our foreign policy, or it was just a political
there. Yeah, I
rhetoric?
don't think so. I think one is, we are too large a country with, and very diverse population, different groups, religious groups. And all that is something would keep on happening in India. There's never a dull moment in India. But I think the the foreign policy, if you look at it, even when governments change, the basic core components of a foreign policy don't change because at the end of the day, it's pursuit of your national interest. Accepting, there's something which is very sensitive to security. Things about China would probably, if public opinion becomes very important for the government. Pakistan, if you have to make some concession, you are worried about the public opinion. With China also. Traditional friendship with Russia also probably. America, yes, because of their overwhelming thing. But I don't think on other small issues, that boycott this, boycott that, does have any influence. So it also depends on which country, is in the play and what kind of crisis has happened. And so I don't think that really impacts upon our policy making by and large.
So, sir, according to you, which global incident or crisis taught India its biggest diplomatic lesson? And it could be anything. Like for me, it was 1962 Indo-China War. Like before that war, we were doing Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, and after that, we got backstabbed by China. So, what is, according to you, that incident that changed the whole scenario of our foreign policy?
I think, as I said, number one, it's a very dynamic process. You spoke about the 62 because that was a wake up call. And we were very young as a nation. Now we are a much more mature nation, much more stable nation. And we have seen changes happening around us. We've realized that with each crisis, there's also an opportunity. We also are more equipped to deal with challenges. We are much stronger than what we were in 62. Our procedures, our institutions are stronger. Our diplomacy has much more experience. Our policy making institutions have much more experience. So I don't think, I think what we are seeing now I think in the last 10, 15 years, if I have to see a challenge, the biggest foreign policy challenge I see it happening now. Suddenly you find, you know, with Trump coming in and the Russia-Ukraine war, they're pushing Russia more and more towards China. And China has an ironclad friendship with Pakistan. Most of Pakistan's military equipment comes from China. Our military equipment comes from Russia. So, and Russia has been a steadfast friend. Even when we faced challenges, Russia came to our support. Now, how much foot we would have in this, the Russia-China. Many people are saying that more and more Russia would become a junior partner to China, because economically, they're even military-wise, that the West would weaken it so much. I think that would be our biggest challenge. A weak Russia, where China dominates over Russia's behavior, would be a very big challenge for us. Because the Pakistan-China factor would come into play. And I think the challenge we now have is the way unilateral action, your rule of law, international institutions are getting undermined. So I think not a single incident, but the environment which is now the geopolitical landscape is the most challenging we've ever faced. So I would not talk of an incident, but I would talk of the current state of affairs. The geopolitical environment in which we are operating has been the most challenging that we have faced so far.
So, if we light up this moment, sir, uh, I was very keen to know about that Kuwait story because I read about your recent interview at Policy Edge, if I'm not wrong, and in
Yeah.
which you talked about this that it was also mentioned in the movie Airlift. So, what is all about that?
You know, I was a young diplomat in Kuwait when the Iraqi invasion happened. And my first posting, and I was sent to study Arabic, so as a language training. When you join the foreign service, you are given a language. So your first posting is to go and learn the language. And so when the invasion happened, so I was asked to move to, since I was in Kuwait. So they said since most, the the repatriation has to happen from Kuwait, 170,000 people. So some people from the embassy of India in Kuwait should be sent to the border to help with the evacuation. And I was a junior most officer. it was a very tough thing. So I think they picked me up. So I was at the Iraq Jordan border for 3 months, and there was there was no place to stay. I still remember there was a small tea shop. There were two of us on duty, and we used to, daytime we would at the border, evening we'll come to the tea shop and sleep in the tea shop for 3 months. And our thing was that till the last person moves, we have to be at the border. And in fact, I was one of the last persons to go back to India, after all those 170,000 people had come. It was a team of about 30 people who were doing all this. The team was disbanded, but I stayed back at the border. So when the movie came, I had no idea. So people started calling me. They said there's a character by the name Sanjiv Kohli in the film. By the way, did you have any role to play in the in the repatriation? So I said yes, but I'd never spoken about it. But I think what they've shown is the character they've shown is someone who's a joint secretary. If you've seen the movie, so when the movie came, I was a joint secretary of the ministry. But my role in airlift was different from what they showed of the character called Sanjeev Kohli in the movie. So somebody said, they would have heard the name, and I don't know how it happened. They never consulted me. Some people said they should have paid me royalty for using my name. I don't know, but I think the only good point was that most people didn't know about this because that time, there were no social media, nothing. So it still remains, our largest evacuation from a war zone. After that, we've seen Yemen, Ukraine, but this kind of number, 170,000, moved over 3 months from an area which was actually, there was a war happening. So without any standard operating procedures. So it was a very creditable thing, to happen. And at least the movie I said made people realize that. So that's in short, the story of Airlift.
So it was very brave of you to do all these things, and we are very proud of your contribution. So, but you have served us for almost 3 decades or 2 decades, sir, if I'm not wrong.
35 years in forest.
35, 3 decades, and more than 3 decades. It's been a long time. So, how do you think the future of India's foreign policy should be? What are the things that India should implement or should have implemented for to get the better results?
No, I think, as I said, your foreign policy is projection of your national strength. So I think we need to build more on the national strength. We need to do more in terms of, you know, in terms of technological upgradation. I think we still, we're far behind, although I think one, kind of thing we lack as a society, not, I won't say the government, is that we tend to, kind of we tend to exaggerate our, things that, we are the best, we are this, we are that. I think we need to realize that the world is moving much faster than us. And so we need to really, leapfrog in terms of technology, second, as I said, reforms, economic reforms. And I think the kind of, divisive agenda or rhetoric we have in the country, because that also, India is, as I said, one of India's biggest strength is, our image as someone who speaks for the most vulnerable and, India's wisdom. But I think there are a lot of now, you can't, since, there's open, international media is there, social media is there. I think some of the stories coming from India are not the best stories. So as people, we have to see that how we could, how could we reclaim that, that position, that you are a country which everyone should look up to, and if your own stories coming out of your own things are not very positive, it becomes very difficult to, use your soft power. And so build up your strengths, economic, political, defense. And as a society, we could be probably, set better examples. There are a lot of times when you see I mean, many countries said that, when Indians travel, you spoke about Indian diplomats, but lots of countries, people say Indian travelers, they make a fool of themselves, the way they behave on this. So these are things I think as a society we have to become better. And and also I think some of our traditional friendships, as I said, Africa, we've somehow we last maybe decade or so, we kind of got more involved with the big power play. I think we also thought we have arrived. But I think the changing global thing is a kind of wake up call that traditional friendships have their own strengths. So how you maintain that? And I said this is one of the most challenging external environments. So how we come out of it, I think that we would have lots of lessons to learn from that also. So as I said, we have lots of inherent strengths. So how to use them purposefully, how to use them meaningfully. And once we come out of this, I think we'll have lots of learnings we would have made, and I think that would help us to, reshape our foreign engagement with other countries. But I think one of the largest strengths I did mention about that is our people. As you know, the world is aging. In the West, declining population. India is still a youthful nation. So most of the in the next 10, 15 years, I think our biggest advantage would be that most of the pipelines for manpower would have to come from India for all countries. Already we've seen in Germany. Japan is opening up. Japan, which probably was never, a very welcome country for. So I think that's a golden opportunity because, India's going out, making an impact there and, you know, creating goodwill for India. So the diaspora, I think that is a big factor, which I didn't mention. I think that would be a major factor in play for the next 10, 15 years. Indian people moving out and doing well for themselves. I'm not saying that they would always come to your benefit. Even some people are saying that the Indian diaspora in US is not helping. But I think you create a goodwill which is overall to your advantage. So when your people go out, they do well. It's not that they would stand up for you for everything, but they do create a bridge. You know, they create an awareness about India. Now, if I say, these people have studied in India, they're doing so well here, so that creates a buzz for our education system. That Indians are hardworking. These people, intelligent people. So all that creates a goodwill. So I think the next 10, 15 years would be very critical for uh, for Indian people in terms of their moving out to different countries because the working age population is very fast declining in Europe, other US, I think, in Asia, Japan, and so those opportunities come up. So how our education system responds to that, because our skills have to match the requirements. We say, we produce the world's largest number of engineers, this. But how many of them are, employable by international standards? So, I'm an engineer. When I was studying, there were only two or three engineering colleges in that state. You know, now there are maybe 50 colleges in that particular area. So it's not that just producing the numbers. I think we also have to look at the kind of people we are, you know, kind of skills we are giving to our people. So our education system has to improve, and so that when our people go out, it's just not they are employable in India. In India you can't create as many opportunities as the population is. So those opportunities are going to come outside. So what kind of skills you are giving to your people so that they are welcome outside, they are employable outside. So that also is a challenge.
So I think we should go for quality over quantity in our.
No, I think it's just I don't think you can compartmentalize quality. Quantities are also important because we have so many people. So you have to find the right thing for everyone. You have to look at which sectors are going to be more intense, manpower intensive, your services sector. Like tourism could take a lot of people, but we have to develop infrastructure, we have to develop this. And services sector probably, would take many people. So, you know, in terms of, you know, just to give you one example, in the Middle East, Gulf countries, you said, most people, Indians, you'll find either in the top professionals, doctors, professors, engineers, managers, or semi-skilled or skilled, labor, electricians, plumbers. But if you look at the healthcare below the doctors, all the nurses would be from Philippines. You look at the hotels, the entire service staff would be from Philippines. I think we still are not seen as skilled enough to be in the hospitality and tourism sector. So I think that sector can create a lot of employment, in India also, outside also. So, training people number wise and quality wise, I think will go together. Healthcare, there's such a huge demand. I think if you could train enough, nurses, or elderly healthcare, that's going to create lots of employment outside. So, but as everyone in India, if you are good in education, you either want to be a doctor, you want to be an engineer. We also don't see that there are also very good opportunities in the hospitality sector, in the healthcare sector, other than being a doctor. So I think we have to take a better balanced view of the world and realize that all kinds of work, are have their own dignities. Sometimes as Indians we could be very conscious that we'll only do this, otherwise we'll not do that.
We need to revamp our education, I think,
Yeah, yeah. Women,
holistically.
50% of your population. So a lot of things are happening in women empowerment. So you have to create opportunities for them also to not only be finding jobs here, but jobs outside. And I think it's happening. It's happening, but I think it's our size and our bureaucracy, our inertia is, you know, I think if we could do things faster and more efficiently, I think that would be good for us as a country.
So now, if we sum up this session, I want you to advise the young Indians who want to understand India's foreign policy, and that should be beyond headlines. So how should they go about it? And
I think,
do you think it is important to understand this?
oh yes, I was I was reading somewhere there was an American diplomat who was saying that the way the international environment is changing. So your knowledge of international affairs is just not for the foreign policy establishments. You're doing business that has a cross-border thing. You do climate has a cross-border. So everything, COVID, we learned from COVID that everything has an international thing. So he said all companies must have, people who who understand international affairs and who understand, how to navigate diverse culture spaces and all that. So I think in India, interested foreign affairs, you should just not see that I want to join the foreign ministry, I want to become a diplomat, so I must, read about foreign affairs or I must analyze things. I think it's going to become more and more important, even if you are a professional, you're a businessman, you do a startup, you work in a company, you're in the healthcare. So, the entire world, everything is going to affect the other country, what's happening outside. So, so I think, you know, read about international affairs, read as much as you can, then imagine, I don't know, not imagine, analyze what factors are at play because, there could be extra regional powers, your own interests, your own motivations, what are your expectations, what are the other side's expectations. It's a good analysis. Otherwise, also, analytical thinking, it would, sharpen the one's thinking and analysis kind of skill. And is going to, as I did, that your knowledge of foreign affairs, I think it will be valued more and more, just not as in the foreign ministry, but also for other professions. So, and it's a very interesting thing to, as I, it's a balancing act. It's a very complex and competitive thing. So it's an interesting area to study, interesting area to analyze. And, uh, and even if even if you're not in the foreign ministry, you're not even if you're working in India, I think an aware person, a person who knows what's happening in the world outside India is always, good to have that kind of knowledge. And now there's a lot of reading material is available. Lots of, as I said, when we were the media would not go that much into analysis of foreign events or foreign relations. These days, so much of information is available, so you don't have to really struggle to find information. Whether on the internet or on in the media, print media, electronic media. So I think people should find some time to look at what's happening internationally and how it affects you as a country and as a person. Because you know every individual also gets affected by what's happening outside. Like this H-1B visas and all that. So what's the future? There are lots of Indians who live there. So what are the opportunities for them? And lots of Indian students go out to study, so they all need to be aware that which country probably at this point of time is a better place to go from job prospects, from long-term stability of the job, long-term stability of the stay there. So so it's a I think it's a very useful, increasingly useful and interesting subject to know, and yeah, people must develop an interest.
I think in this, the role of former diplomats like you plays a very important role and a crucial role to guide us because there's a lot of wrong news or the fake news revolve around the
Yeah.
media. So it's very hard for us to find the authentic source. So I think
I think
people
it's
like
not
you.
only, yeah, I think it's not only about foreign affairs. I think if you just depend upon social media, there would be fake news of all kinds. So, yeah, you're right. You need to find good people, not only for foreign relations, but for other areas also. And I think for that, I think good people are available. You just have to put in that effort to reach out to them. And I think those who probably have something to share should also reciprocate and make themselves available to those who are interested to to share your experiences, whatever you've learned with them. I think that's why I never said no. I mean, if anybody wants to talk to me, and I always try to make myself available. I think this service has given us so much, so you owe it to share your knowledge, your experience, your wisdom. Because as I said, this is something which is going to be very important, not only for the country, but for every individual to know about international about how international relations are managed. And there would be hundreds of thousands of people like me. It's just you know people need to make an effort like you did. So I think you set an example of how to make an effort to reach out, and the way you will probably share it with friends and everyone. So that's how I think you play a very good important role in this. So thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity.
So thank you so much, sir, for coming. And
No, thank you, and as I said, you gave me this opportunity, so I'm thankful for that. And it was an interesting discussion, and please stay in touch.
yes, sir. So just one thing, everyone who is watching this, the insights sir has shared, I can bet you are not going to get anywhere. I can bet you on this. So please show gratitude and respect towards her in the comment section and also share your feedback about the this session. And keep watching the Civic Voice because we have some very important sessions lined up for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.